Oh, I'm just starting. Yep. Thank you.
Just take the plate.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you should be able to hear me. I have just hit 400,000 subscribers. That's pretty incredible. Hello. It says there are 0 people watching right now. Don't know why that is. Now, I have like a list of questions, which I've got from patrons. I've also got a list of questions, which I have from, yes, that was the girlfriend. Yeah, she just made me breakfast because I woke up about half an hour ago, or an hour ago. Yeah, an hour ago or so. And thank you, VTFDSL. Vindivisible. Thank you very much. I also have a whole bunch of questions which I posted on that post from YouTube. So, I've got 175 people watching. Also, apologies if I eat a little bit, because I've literally just woken up and haven't had time to have breakfast. There's no sound that I need, is there? No, I don't need to have my headphones on. So I don't do, live streams that often. So, I guess we should probably get into the questions. And also feel free to, flick me questions on there. I will be monitoring the super chats. So I will be answering all of the super chat questions as well. To make sure I get those. But we will get into it, and thank you if it's midnight in Germany. That is, I'm having pancakes, which are made from pretty much just like banana and eggs and oats, and they're really nice. They're really tasty. Mishka is not at this house at the moment. He's nice. He's really happy though. He's fine. Is that a sock on your mic, Tim? I'm feeling judged. Yes, it is a sock on my mic because I don't have a proper pop filter. So, yeah, you judge me, do you? So yeah, if I miss any super chats, I promise I will come back to them. And I will be trying to take some of the questions that appear in the live chat. So, shall we get on to it? So what are you doing besides YouTube, school, university, job? This is from Trey and why are you such a nerd? So I am a YouTuber. That's my job. That's what I do for my living now. I'm incredibly lucky to have the job that I have. I absolutely love it. I was a law student and an arts student. I have a law degree and an English degree and a politics degree. But I finished that. I graduated last year, and now I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I guess that's my job. I'm not studying anything. I pretty much work on this. I pretty much work on this 6 days a week. It's an amazing job. I'm on the fence about buying your book. I'm not a writer, but I do think help with English in university. Hey, if you think it could help, then yeah. I mean, I have had a lot of people at university and in schools and teachers tell me that they actually use my videos in their class. Like, it's got educational value. It's intended to be used in that sort of context. So, totally. If that's what you're up to. I only just got a haircut. If that's what you're thinking about my hair. I got a haircut literally a couple of days ago. Because my girlfriend been bugging me about it for a long time. Deservingly so. So, thank you. The Game of Thrones video. That is the highest rise in video views I've ever had for a video. 60k in about 6 hours or something. I've never had that before, which is shocking because I've never done Game of Thrones content. It's pretty yeah, I'm pretty happy with that video overall. I was trying to work within what they gave me within the show, but you know. So, would you consider making a video about Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere? This is from Patron. I have a rule, which is that I typically don't make content about universes that I'm not like really knowledgeable about, because part of the reason I started doing my channel is that I saw a whole lot of these nerd channels, particularly about Avatar, that didn't really like know their stuff that well, and I wanted to do things in depth. And things with Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, I'd be able to do some stuff, but I wouldn't be able to do it to the depth that I like doing it, that I feel happy with. I would never be able to make a video that I feel most adequately represents his work, because he has so much work that builds into this vast span of lore. So it's unlikely to see that as a video. So, yeah. I believe... Thank you, SP O'Neill, for that super chat. It's very kind of you. You didn't ask a question. If I see your question, I'll try to make sure I get it. So, next question. Since you broke even with your book... My book, by the way. Where's it gone? Here it is. Look at that. This is the proof copies. So it's actually... There's a couple things wrong with this one. But... and your YouTube channel is getting bigger. Do you see yourself sticking to YouTube and writing as a career? If not, what other plans do you have? I see myself... Ultimately, I would love to be a writer. A fiction writer. And this is not a fiction book. It's an educational textbook, resource, however you wanna use it. My plan is to keep making YouTube videos on writing, on world building, all that sort of stuff, and to keep bringing out editions of this kind of every 1 or 2 years that compile all of the videos. And like imagine 5 or 6 years from now, and there's a kind of a anthology of the books. I've seen a couple of references to the Warhammer universe in your video. Do you play the game? I don't play that game particularly. I do actually have the Lord of the Rings version of it. And I love strategy games. I'm actually designing like an RTS, not miniatures game, but that sort of tabletop war game at the moment. Just as fun. It's not like gonna be it's not gonna be like a thing that I'm gonna probably make anything of. It's just because I enjoy designing games. Opinions on Wattpad for amateur writers. It's fine for amateur writers. I mean, it's a place where there's a community of writers and people read stuff. Like, I don't have any problem. Like, obviously there's a lot of fan fiction on there. What's so wrong with that? A lot of people write fan fiction. I don't, personally, and I actually had a Wattpad account until I took all my videos, all my books down. So, there was some people out there would have actually already read some of my stuff. Oh hey, Akne, that's one of our mods, guys. Say hi to her. So, next question: How do you decide what parts of your research goes into a video and what doesn't? So this is something I really struggle with. Like, I tend to find a lot of tangents that I find really interesting. Like in the recent Game of Thrones video, I had this whole tangent about how the director defined the 3 acts and how the color schemes of the 3 acts switched from between the acts, and he defined the act very weirdly, and I wanted to talk about why the first act is the way it is, but I didn't talk about that because that's not fundamentally related to the content. There's a lot of stuff which is just interesting to me. And I tend to I try to stick very closely to the very closely to what the question is, and that's why I try to do narrow questions, like very narrow topics, because I want to do it well, and so I try to do everything I can. I try to give as much detail as I possibly can. So virtually all of my research usually goes into it, unless it's like a tangent that I find interesting that others wouldn't. That would essentially leave people going, okay, but I didn't learn anything from that. That's not fundamentally important to the discussion. Thank you very much for the super chat, B Studios. That was very kind of you. I also got a question. My favorite Avenger. I'm a Captain America fan. I like how they wrote him. I think they did him pretty well. Zlender Knight 99. Are you going to do more videos on How to Train Your Dragon? Yes. So people have noticed that I am doing fewer videos. Fewer videos on How to Train Your Dragon over the last few months. And I mean, there's partly a reason for that. The series is finished, and I think that I've still got a couple more videos in me, but I've been thinking a lot about the direction in which I want to take my channel and where that leaves me. And I really like educational content and lore discussions. Like my recent video on Tolkien and his philosophy is quite it takes more of a it's taking religion or philosophy or economics or politics and applying it to these fictional worlds, and I find that really interesting to do. There will be more How to Train Dragon videos in the future. I just can't know when. How do we send you work we've done for your review? So I get a lot of requests for that, for people to read over their book, and it's really flattering that people even want my opinion in the first place, because I am literally just someone online. I'm not actually someone special any more than anyone else out there. So it's really flattering that people want my opinion. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I just don't have the time to do that as much as I would like to. I don't really have enough, much time for my own writing as much as I would like. However, patrons, some higher ranking patrons do get a perk of me reading through their work and working with them. But that's a higher tier patron to kind of limit the work that I would have to do for that. And I'm very thankful for the patrons who do that. Hey, from Ireland, as a fellow Tolkien fan, what do you think of the critique by the likes of George R. R. Martin that Tolkien's villains are 100% bad and one-dimensional, with the exception of Gollum, maybe? You should watch my recent video on Tolkien's philosophy. I actually talk about why Sauron is an effective villain in the story. And the reason is, I don't think saying that there's a pure evil villain is like a critique so much. Pretty much I talk about how Tolkien isn't so much concerned with subjective human morality like George R. R. Martin is. Tywin, the is it moral if you're just protecting your family kind of thing, but you murder 300 women and children. That sort of thing, which is playing into kind of the grey ambiguity of the human story. That's all fantastic, but it's a very different question, which is what I think Tolkien was looking at, to look at the nature of good and evil itself. So evil and good as concepts in the religious objective sense, which is what Tolkien believed in, and is still a very valid and interesting philosophical debate. What are those things? And his story is a lot more to do with that. So, Sauron, he believed that nothing was inherently evil. Everything was corrupted good, which is a very Christian idea. Everything began as good. God looked upon creation, saw it as good. And that's why Sauron was once good. That was why Melkor was once good. And I think Elrond one says, he says, not everything is not all things are, no thing is evil from the start. Everything once starts as good. And there's a lot more than that. And the video delves into how good and evil relate. And I think that's where the impact of Lord of the Rings comes from. And I really like that kind of approach to take, because we don't see it much. We're very into the grey morality, but it's very hard to do a discussion on that philosophical level quite well. So, probably do another. I'll do another patron question now. One does not simply create a live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender series. What do you hope will be covered by it? I am someone who really likes like loyal storytelling in films and you know, of books and stories that I love. So I'm hoping that that it will be close to. I'm hoping it will be very close to the original story. Interestingly, the creators have said that part of the reason they didn't do bending as particularly so what we saw in Korra was what they originally wanted for how bending was meant to look. It's a lot more extravagant and fast paced. So they just didn't have the budget to animate stuff like that. Like their water animation was like really really expensive. I remember. I've noticed several references to the Legend of Spyro in your videos. As a huge fan of it, I always get. Are there plans to make more videos? Legend of Spyro, it doesn't have hugely deep lore as much as I wish it did. I absolutely adore the games. I grew up on them. I have every single game. They are my gemstones. I adore the game. I play them still each year. You know, if I'm sad, I go to play Spyro. Sorry, I was talking about what I hope we cover by the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. I would think that I would like to see just kind of the same story, loyally told, with possibly some more inventive bending. Like in the first season, you know. It'd be really nice to see some of the places kind of visualized, and I want to spend a lot of time. I'd want them to spend a lot of time kind of actually showing us the world, because I feel like they could do a lot more with that. In terms of changes in story, I don't think they could or should do anything different. Maybe they should add in a couple of scenes to set up the lion turtles a bit better. Because I don't think that would be changing the story. It would just be adding things to make a payoff more successful. It's not actually making the original payoff weaker. So, yeah. What do you think is going to happen in the last 3 Game of Thrones episodes now that Cersei is the big bad? That's from Netflix. So my personal theory, and this probably isn't going to be true, is that Cersei is going to be betrayed by the Golden Company, who are going to be paid off by the Iron Bank, because the Iron Bank has been trying to get the Westeros throne to pay them the money that they owe them for ages, and they seem to just keep lending them money. And that scene where he like organizes it with Cersei just seemed a little bit off to me. Like he had a plan, he had something that he was thinking, and I can imagine them like it's in the middle of the battle, and then they suddenly betray her, and that eventually leads to a downfall. Jaime kills Cersei. I am a fan of the Valancourt theory. I kind of want Dany to go crazy a little bit, and to end up having to die somehow, because I don't see her taking the throne. I just don't. My personal opinion is that no one's going to end up on the Iron Throne in the South, or some unknown person, someone that we don't really know, just some lordly person that doesn't really matter. After Cersei's been killed, and then the North will become independent. It might be the Six Kingdoms and the North, and the North will probably be ruled by Sansa. That's my bet. And the struggle between the last 2 Targaryens will, you know, Jon and Dany will pretty much destroy the kingdom. I reckon Jon will survive though. That's my bet. Yeah. Just got a super chat. Any advice on writing travel scenes in high fantasy without readers losing interest? 2 or more characters moving from plot A to B, one setting. It's really hard because I researched these sorts of questions, you know, for a long time before making my videos. So my advice obviously seems a lot more prepared than you know I would be able to just on asking off the top of my head. So writing travel scenes, that's a really specific thing. Ultimately, what really matters is just having a if the characters are like in a carriage traveling and you're wanting them to interact, it's just about a matter of making the scene interesting by itself, you know, to have them, to have the scene kind of have an emotional beat in the story, because oftentimes, you know, they sort of like just have to convey that they're traveling, but if you've given an emotional beat to their story that happens as they travel, then that'll make it a lot more effective. Yeah, I would say make sure there's a clear sense of place. You can make it interesting by having interesting places and not just interesting interactions. I'm a big fan of, like, you know, they're traveling and they see something and there's a side story where, you know, you learn about something horrible that happened there, and like little secrets like that. But, you know, writing a good travel scene, it's so heavily dependent on exactly what the context is. It's hard to say for sure. But yeah, I'd say just make sure there's an emotional beat between the interactions, with the interactions of the characters, that would be somehow influenced by the place that they are traveling through. So you're tying together the traveling and the actual story itself. Okay, let's go for another YouTube question. What is your favorite color? That's from Marwin. My favorite color is probably turquoise. Oh, purple. Probably purple. I really like purple. How did Mishka obtain the original Tim? So Mishka's had me since he was a kitten. He was actually a really, really scared kitten. Like, he would hide under the bed and he wouldn't, like, want cuddles because he was just terrified of everyone. And now he's the most cuddly kitty in the whole world, and you could put a vacuum cleaner on him and he wouldn't even move. And he's just amazing. So, it was at our house. Like, this is at a different house. We got him from a pet store. This one wasn't from the SPCA. And this was about 15 years ago. And he's adorable, and I love him so damn much. Oh, that's actually a good question. Cosmo Reverb. What are your thoughts on historical realism in fantasy? Do you think a writer needs to be as accurate as possible, or are people a little too critical and pedantic of battles and war? That's a really good question, because it's become particularly pertinent since the Battle of Winterfell. So, I don't think... What matters is precedent. Historical realism isn't necessary for a fantasy story. Far from it. Of course it's not. Harry Potter, there's no real battle strategy in the Battle of Hogwarts. They could have done so much more than they did. But we don't care because the story was never really about battle strategy. Like, it was never gritty and realistic in that sense. It was about an emotionally realistic story of love and friends and so on. Game of Thrones, however, is different because there is historical realism. In, you know, the Battle of Blackwater, they very effectively utilize strategy. I mean, Tyrion sets up a giant bomb to wipe out his fleet, and then in the books he traps them with a giant chain inside the harbor so they can't escape. That's realistic. That's what you would do. Oh, I might be about to sneeze. Yeah, so there's that precedent which matters. If you want to write a historical realistic story, then you should be historically realistic. But like the Battle of Narnia, people didn't care that it wasn't hugely realistic. Like, they shouldn't have attacked. They should have used the ground that they had to their advantage. And this is in the line The Witch and the Wardrobe. But the story wasn't meant to be about that. We never questioned that. So, yeah, it's about realism. I would like to see more realism, I'll be perfectly honest. That's just because that's my kind of thing. Gandalf and Westeros. I saw a couple of comments about this. About could he Could he save Westeros? That's from Avalok. Thank you very much for the super chat. Could Sauron dominate Westeros? Yes. And could Gandalf save it? No, because Gandalf cannot stop Sauron by himself, and Gandalf wouldn't be able to intervene directly if we're going by the laws of interaction in that. And before it vanishes, Laney Studios 5, when it comes to writing, do you believe that good writing and character growth and character consistency should take precedence over fan service? Yeah, definitely. I'm not really about that fan service life. Like, some things are harmless, like Tormund and Brienne in Game of Thrones, where he's like, "Where is the big woman? Oh!" But a lot of the time, fan service can be quite harmful to the story overall. And I would always choose good writing, character growth, and character consistency over fan service. Whether or not those things are mutually exclusive, though, is a different question. But I would focus on the writing before anything else. This is from Patreon. This is from Vlad. How do you find the research for your on-writing and world-building video essays? So a lot of it is just what I think about. I think about, writing and stories that I love a lot. Like, I think about a book, and when I'm reading it, I think, why does this chapter work? Why is this making me feel things? Why am I crying inside? Why does this empire seem so cool to me? And I think about this sort of stuff a lot. So a lot of what I talk about in the world building videos and the writing videos is just things I think about by myself, or just naturally. So when I go to a film, I think about this as I'm watching it, and I pick up that sort of stuff because it's interesting to me. I like doing it. When I was younger, I once went through Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the first chapter, and I went through and I wrote down, why does this chapter work? What makes it work? Why is Harry Potter so attention grabbing when it came out? And we see some of that in a couple of the writing videos. I've referenced like why the description of Harry works. Yeah. So that's that. Otherwise, I go through on TV tropes, which is just like a list of the tropes of certain things, and I find examples of things that I want to talk about, and then I read up on them and see why they work and why they don't. And that's basically it. And how do I find the research? So yeah, TV tropes, things I like, and then reading books and watching stuff that matters to help. Thank you for the reply. Plenty of pictures. Thank you very much. It's Christy. I hope it was helpful. I'm sorry that I can't give as much. I'm afraid I can't give as much detail in my work, in advice as I would in a video. You've covered the Mistborn series in your videos. Have you also read the other Cosmere books by Brandon Sanderson? Which did you like specifically? Mistborn is probably my favourite, but I haven't read nearly as much. I haven't read Elantris. I haven't read his other series. I've read The Way of Kings, parts 1 and 2, which is a huge, hefty book. Goodness. And I haven't read the sequels to that yet. I haven't read Oathbringer, as much as I would love to. I'm still working my way through Consider Phlebas by... Oh, where's the book? Ah, damn, it's out there. Never mind. Consider Phlebas, which is a really good really good sci-fi book. This is from Slender99. Do you play Dungeons and Dragons, and what do you know about its universe? Yes, I play Dungeons and Dragons. I know very little about its universe because I mostly use the rules and the fantasy framework, and I write my own campaigns with its own lore and its own world. I I don't find Dungeons and Dragons lore particularly interesting. I find it relatively run-of-the-mill. It did a lot of, like, firsts, so a lot of fantasy lore is drawn from Dungeons and Dragons, which means it was very interesting. And there is a lot of cool stuff in there, but I like using the framework of Dungeons and Dragons to make other stories. So, you know, my my campaigns are typically not combat heavy. There's a lot of mystery, and there's a lot of puzzles, and there's a lot of character interaction, secret missions, that sort of stuff. This is from Dex Holder Anya. I've felt since the writers have lost the crutch of the books, the writing hasn't been as good. Yes. Yep. Ever since season 5, they've lost the direction of the books. I would agree. Yep. That's totally fair enough. Do you think the misinterpretation that Game of Thrones did to the source material is going to set a bad precedent for other adaptations such as Wheel of Time? No, because the precedent has already been out there. Like, bad adaptations of works have been around for decades. Do you prefer hard or soft magic systems? I prefer soft magic systems, and that's probably just the Tolkienite in me. But I find them more enchanting. I find worlds woven with ancient magic that you can't predict, that there are these dark depths that we don't understand, that we cannot go into this area of the world, for it is woven with mysterious spells. That's fascinating to me. Brandon Sanderson really popularized hard magic, like, in a way that hadn't been done before. Wheel of Time did it as well. Wheel of Time's quite hard in that exploded it, but he didn't cause as many hard magic systems as Brandon Sanderson has, I think. Once his books came out, a lot of other people started doing it. But he was definitely influenced by Wheel of Time, by the fact that obviously he wrote the final book. And I find soft magic systems to be more easily... they're a lot more enchanting, and they have this kind of more fantastical world feeling to it, which I just happen to like. But maybe I haven't read enough hard magic stories. So, yeah, I possibly haven't read enough hard magic stories to probably say that. Let's go to YouTube. Oh, that's another one about D&D. How exactly do you make one of your videos? Do you choose the videos, pictures, and scenes before you write the script, or do you write the script and then figure out which media to insert? I don't consider what media I'm going to insert at all when I'm writing the script. I write the script because that's where my talent lies. I feel like my abilities are most reflected in my scripting. I don't feel that I'm a particularly good editor overall. I've definitely gotten better than I used to be. But I still struggle with that a lot. But my editing, my writing the scripts is where I am. So I put all the effort into that, and then I frame everything else around that. So, what's your advice on, this is another patron question, what's your advice on writing believable relationships in a novel? So this is not going to be about how you should do it, because obviously writing a relationship is just so, I don't even know if you mean a romantic relationship there, but, so I'm going to talk a bit about something I don't like, which is, I don't like, hang on, I'm just going to put that user in timeout. There we go. That user is now in timeout. So, I don't like conflict that is derived from misunderstandings between. I don't like conflict, which is, this is really chronic in shows like The Big Bang Theory, where one person in the relationship sees something and they misinterpret it, and then the other character goes, no. And then they all come together at the end and they talk about their insecurities, and it's all a misunderstanding. It's not actually about a deep emotional conflict between them. So, one of the best written relationships I've ever seen, and I highly recommend watching this show if you want, is The Office, the US version. Jim and Pam are the best written relationship on a TV series I have ever seen. Hands down, far, far past anyone else. And the reason for that is that the conflict that builds in their story is that it comes around from like one partner wanting to support the other, but the other it means that they sort of can't tell them about their issues because the other one has to focus on what they want to do and they're living out their dream, but they also know that it's putting a lot of pressure on their partner, and the partner doesn't know what to do because they're taking care of the kids, and she feels isolated and he feels, you know, it's so amazingly done, and it builds incredibly well. And it's realistic. It takes a long time. We can see the seeds of it going. They try to solve it, and then they can't solve it, and they try to solve it again. Because relationships are complicated. Relationships have issues that build over time. And it's not a misunderstanding. It's a fundamental emotional conflict where characters want things that come into conflict with one another, but they don't, you know, they aren't necessarily accounting for the emotions of others as much as they could. So, I highly recommend watching that. Yeah, and for the record, though, that conflict doesn't come into, like, the last few seasons. Yeah, and like, it just seems really shallow to have misunderstandings guide the relationship conflict. It's like, I saw you with another girl, and, you know, I thought you were cheating on me. And it's like, people don't jump to that conclusion usually, or if they do, it's ridiculous. It's... write them more in depth. Oh, take time to do it. Number 2, things aren't usually solved in one meeting. They're usually attempted to solve and then not solved, and then attempted to solve and then not solved. Yes, relationships are complicated. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a rant. Nope, no super chats. All right. Okay, I'll get back to patrons. What are you gonna name your next cat? I don't know what. Oh, I really want to name him Nazgul or something from Lord of the Rings. I've told Laura that we need to name our kitties something from the Lord of the Rings or Avatar. So I'd love to have like I'd love to have like a little blue-eyed kitty. Can cats have blue eyes? I don't even know. But I'd love to have like a kitty that I call a Zula or something. That'd be so cool. Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, what's the real? Relationships are complicated, but grown-up, healthy, non-toxic relationships communicate. That's exactly it. Yeah, your characters should be trying to communicate as they mature, and difficulties come from characters not communicating in ways that matter. They keep things that they should be saying. They say things that, you know, I really like that. So, would you be interested, this is from Arctis, would you be interested in doing casual writing or analysing game narrative Twitch streams? I've considered doing, like, you know, thank you, everyone's telling me that cats can have blue eyes. That's fantastic. I should get a cat with blue eyes. I have considered doing kind of more relaxed Twitch streams type stuff, but I don't probably have the time for it just moment. I'm not really hugely comfortable doing streams like that just yet. Let's see if we can get one. Any questions in the chat? Let's have a look. Nope, all of the comments are just talking about about having a blue-eyed cat. So, any advice on writing diverse characters or thoughts on diversity in fiction? Oh, that's a very big. I've been asked a lot about whether I will talk about diversity in fiction or so on. I put out a tweet recently where I said I said does an author have a responsibility to represent minorities in their work? And it was really, really sharply divided, about 50-50 against yes, sort of, and no, quite firmly no. And the problem is that we're talking about diversity in fiction is that there's so much politics involved that I find it difficult to give an objective analysis, because people will say I'm wrong even if I just focus on writing a good story. And that's always been the focus of my channel. Just doing good setup, good payoff, good writing in general, to try and make a good story. And when you mix politics in with that, I don't want to be commenting on politics. So it makes it very hard to do a video where people will look at it from a storytelling perspective. And I'm not sure that I probably want to delve too far into that. Hello, this is from Dwaggy. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hello from America. I always wanted to ask you about what your thoughts are on the trope called the Planet of the Hats, which is where all cultures do one specific thing. Will you ever talk about it in a video? I have considered talking about it. I don't do trope talks. I'm not quite OSP. But I definitely have considered talking about, Planet of the Hats. I talk about like how you world build cultures, and oftentimes fantasy stories do have, that kind of this kingdom is entirely, they're all made of thieves. This kingdom, they're all made of they're all Vikings. And it comes from, I think the Planet of the Hats trope comes from our caricatures of our real world societies. So when we look at Vikings, and they're all these gruff, tough, manly, bearded people, and they're kind of a Planet of a Hat, like how Planet of Hats, which is what we kind of think of. We tend to define them by these very few traits. And then we've got, Asiatic cultures, which are all very, they're earthy and they're wise, and it comes from I think our simplification of real world cultures. So I would definitely talk about that when I talk about kind of world building cultures and so on. John Truby says that every good story carries a political message. You can't pretend you haven't a political opinion. I've read John Truby's book. I don't agree with everything he says. But there's a difference between having overt political messages and having discussions that could be applied to political scenarios. I draw a distinction there. And I'm not saying that politics doesn't have a place in fiction. I'm not saying that at all. There's plenty of stuff which has fantastic discussions of politics and complex, difficult, controversial ideas, and they do it incredibly well. That's also out there. So. What editing software to use? I use Audacity for my audio, and I use Adobe Premiere Pro for my video editing. Landry Brown, I'm sorry if this is a personal question. What's going on with Mishka? You mentioned on Instagram that your new house kind of cats. So I moved. Technically speaking, Mishy is a family kitty. I had him since I was a kid, but But I moved out of the house with my girlfriend, and Mishi lives with my parents, and he's getting very old now, so it's probably best that he stays where he's lived for most of his life. And I still go to see him as much as I can, because I you know, I love him so damn much, and I miss him all the time. But yeah, he is staying there, and he stays there with the other dogs and my mum, who loves him very much. Why the frick did you appear in the Rent On comeback video? The Renton's this other YouTuber. We have this mildly banterous relationship. We're good. He messaged me a couple of weeks ago. He's like, "Hey, I need a thing for a video," and I was like, "Yeah, I can film that for you." That's how that came about. As a fantasy writer, this is from Corleale. As a fantasy writer and reader, what are your thoughts on Sympathy from Patrick Rothfuss's The Name of the Wind? I think it's a really good, unique magic system. I'll be interested to see where they go with it in the future. I'm afraid I don't probably know the intricacies as much of it as I would like. So, so I would, you know, I want to see where they're going to take that in the future. Oh goodness, there's lots of questions in the chat. I don't know how I can. Which one do I want to answer? No, I'm gonna skip that. Any book recommendations? My book, which you can get the ebook of, down at the link in the description below for just $5, coming out on May 30th. Sorry, I'll stop there. But book recommendations. Depends what genre. I'm going to assume you mean fantasy or sci-fi. The Mortal Engines is a really, really good, fun book and series. Consider Phoebus is really good. And what's the book that I read recently? Why is your English so good? Because that's my first language. I grew up speaking English. Did you not? I'm sorry, I'm from New Zealand. What's your favorite color? Oh no, I answered that. So, do you have a girlfriend? Yes, I have a girlfriend. She's lovely. We've been together for nearly 5 years. It's a lovely part of my life, and I love her very, very much, and she's incredible. And she made me breakfast this morning. She made me pancakes, but I haven't been eating them. What's your favorite series to do videos on? Avatar, hands down. I adore Avatar with every fiber of my being, and that probably comes across in my videos. Like, I love doing really in-depth discussions, because I used to always see these discussions which are like discussing the Avatar lore, and they say, did you know that it talks about firebending, and it's like, did you know firebending goes into lightning bending as well? And it's like, yes, of course I knew that. Give me something that's mildly in-depth, and so I decided to do my own videos that were a lot more in-depth, and so we get videos like Azula's Psychology, which has been incredibly well received, and I'm very, very thankful for that, because I put a hell of a lot of work into that. And it took me a lot longer than usual. Really happy with that. What do you think of a movie being made about Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett? I'm really happy they're doing that. All of the Terry Pratchett movies are fantastic. I love them with a passion. The Hogfather is absolutely amazing. It has one of my favourite scenes in fiction ever in it. And they did that so well. Christopher Lee as Death was incredible. They're going to have to cast someone else, because he passed. No. I'm super excited for that. I will definitely be will definitely be Why did you stop posting funny videos about life like the ones at the beginning of your channel? Because I moved on to other content, I'm afraid. What is your... This is from Eric Litch on Patreon. What is your stance on Word of God versus Death of the Author? So to give a little bit of context, Word of God is essentially, if the author says something about the text, then that is the interpretation to take, or that is the truth. So, for example, if it's not quite clear whether or not a character ended up in a relationship with another character, and then the author, out of the book, in real life, says they became a couple, is that canon? Is that the proper interpretation, even if it's not in the book? Versus Death of the Author is like, once the book is out of their hands, then people's own interpretation of the book is just as valid as the author's. I come pretty firmly down on the side of... Thank you, Stump Gamer. I come down pretty firmly down on the side of Word of God. I find it really, really hard to understand the position that just because a book becomes published, like the act of publishing, that means it's out of the author's hands. That to me is really weird. Like, you have to essentially, if you take the publishing thing away, then you're essentially telling the author that their way to interpret their own book, which is their own thing and they have it, is less valid or not more valid. That just seems really weird. And like the notion that just because, like, let's take a book that's never quite finished. Let's take the Silmarillion from Tolkien's Silmarillion. He never actually finished that book. But there were lots of little things that he noted and side notes and his own private writings and letters and so on about how the story is meant to work. And the notion that those aren't part of the story just because, or the notion that you could validly not, you could ignore them is just really, really weird. You essentially have to be willing to tell an author that their work is not their own. But I mean, that comes from probably me being a big fan of Tolkien, where there's a lot of like him saying what the proper thing is. What do I think of J.K. Rowling? Well, there's a difference between saying, I think that what she says about the books, it is canon. I do accept it as canon. I can't just ignore it. Like, she is the author. It's her own work to do with as she chooses. I think she's not really being smart about how she's doing it. I think that a lot of the stuff that she's been adding to the canon is just kind of bizarre. Also, like, for example, let's say something isn't canon, but an author says it is, but then they bring out a sequel, which then has that in it. It's like, oh, now it's canon because it's been published, so it matters only that it's been published. The act of publishing makes it canon. Why can't... That's just such a bizarre thought to me. Yeah, it's way too much emphasis on the literal act of publishing. So yeah, J.K. Rowling, what she says is canon. I just don't think it's good canon, a lot of it. So yeah, there's a whole lot of details in a story which may only come to light in sequels or prequels, and you'd have to be willing to say that they aren't canon until they're published for that to make sense. Which means that prior to the original book being published, nothing's canon. which is a weird thing to me because my story is my own, and I definitely know the story that I'm writing and what's canon there. I mean, people are gonna, people are gonna, disagree, and that's fine. I don't really have any problem with that. I don't have a super strong feeling. It's just that I have grown up I've grown up reading series where I put a lot of emphasis on the intentions of the author, and I find it really interesting to find out what the intentions of the author are. Because if we're gonna say that everything is if we're gonna use stories as a way to analyze the world we live in, then I think accounting for what the intentions of the author are does matter. But that's just my opinion, Why is my sister messaging me? Oh, I don't know. My sister is messaging me on Facebook. Sorry, that was a very long rant. This is from Tamal Thor. As a whole series, do you believe A Song of Ice and Fire is lacking compared to epics like The Lord of the Rings? And if so, what could be done to improve it? No. I'm afraid I don't believe that A Song of Ice and Fire is lacking. I think it's telling a different story, and I think it's telling that story very, very well. All props to George R. R. Martin. On a scale of 1 to 10, on a scale of 10 to 10, how annoying are your sisters, especially Gemma? Gemma, fantastically annoying. Just awful. Gemma, if you see this live stream, I want you to know that you are the bane of my existence. What's that oh, that was an interesting comment. When it comes to word of God and death of the author, it makes me think of the phrase, a verbal contract isn't worth the paper it's written on. Yeah, interesting quote. Star Wars or Star Trek? Hashtag Stargate! Ha! There we go. Bet you never expected that. Okay, let's find another question. Also, I'm sorry if I've missed any super chats. I wasn't really paying attention for a second. Are moral statements true? Do they have some other kind of force? Goodness. I don't know if I can... I can't deal with that, Theo Caro. Come on. Although I'm a Stargate Atlantis, I'm not an SG-1 fan. I think SG-1 is really good, but I prefer Atlantis. This is from Ryan Ratchford. Could you tell us about your favorite hard magic system you've created? Would like to see. I don't I don't believe I've created a hard magic system that is worth talking about. I had this idea one time for a hard magic system where essentially there are kind of like 6 different, you'd call them elements, but this was when I was younger, so I was trying to take off Avatar basically, and essentially the elements existed in the 6 elements existed in a hexagram, and you would draw hexagrams that drew lines between the different ones, and if you could draw them between all 6 elements, and you would gain some measure of control over all 6 elements. But if you only did it around one of the 6 elements, then you'd gain a lot of control over that. And to gain control over things that sort of like cross between them, so let's say ice is air and water, then you'd have to draw connections between the 2 of those. And so people would usually specialize in like 3, and they'd draw between the 3 of those. But it's not that fantastic. I don't have the Brandon Sanderson skills, I'm afraid. Aww. I love you too, Laura. I love you. Ah. You're adorable, you know. I'll come give you a hug later. Where is your dream holiday? I'd love to go and have like a house in Switzerland or Finland in the Lakes District. And that would be incredible. Having a house looking over like waterfalls and rivers and lakes and so on. That, in the middle of a forest, entirely isolated, and just have like a week there, 2 weeks there, just me in this like wooden house with a view, rivers, waterfall. I think I've said that quite a few times now, and you can just wake up and hear the sound around hear the sound of nature around you. Thank you, Magikov. That's very kind of you. What are your thoughts on Patrick Rothfuss as a world builder and as a storyteller in general? I got to admit, I found his book hard to get into. I found The Name of the Wind difficult to get into. I think it's his first book from what I remember. It's his first book, which is it's an incredible work for a first book. Yeah. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think overall it's a good quality book, but I would have to probably read more of his work in the future to kind of give a good thing, because a lot of people just kind of hit on like, oh, an amazing idea one time, which is fine. So I think he's probably better with world building than he is for writing. It's a very beautifully world built world. It feels very vivid, feels very real. But I did find Name of the Wind hard to get into. But that's just my just a quirk of mine. So goodness. Avatar: The Last Airbender or How to Train Your Dragon? Avatar: The Last Airbender, easily. I am a massive fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender so much. Its depth and storytelling is unmatched by any animated series I've ever seen. The closest that we come to it is like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. This is from... did I miss a... Nope, I didn't. This is from Mr. Abaddon. How does history education look in New Zealand? Do you focus more on your own continent or those most powerful in its time, like Europe and China? Do you have any in-depth lesson about the French... Do you have any in-depth lesson about events like the French Revolution? That's a very obscure and specific question. New Zealand history, we mostly teach... European history, as is the case with most Western countries. We do put a focus on New Zealand's role in the Pacific, especially since the UK joined the EU in the 70s. But we focus on World War II, World War One, going through to the Cold War, and our role in places like Vietnam and so on. Yeah. And we don't typically focus that much more on China, other than as China's trying to exert their influence in the Pacific. That's kind of it, because we have like a really weird, unique relationship with China. We have all these trade deals with China that China didn't give to anyone else, because they were like, oh, we're going to become more capitalist and free market. We're going to try out doing a trade deal with a tiny country like New Zealand. So we have this weird trade relationship with China now. How do you feel about having so many fans? This is from Mr. Abaddon. Do you feel pressure on letting them down? Yeah, the pressure on the pressure to perform essentially is really the pressure to perform. Did I seriously just use that terminology? I feel an immense pressure to make certain types of content and make sure I do it well, and I get, I really freak out if I'm worried that it's gonna be screwed over, and I have to keep patrons happy while also keeping my broader audience happy. And then you get called out for anything and everything. Like, you could do the most harmless video in the world and you get criticized for it. I don't have too much criticism though. I'm pretty lucky. So yeah. Have you ever been recognized on the streets as Hello Future Me? Yes, a few times. Most of my audience is in America, so I don't see, I don't really get that much. But I have been recognized. I was recognized on a cruise ship. I was recognized at university. I was recognized in a supermarket, and I was recognized another place. It has happened a couple of times. Also, someone said they could recommend the Magium, I think it was. Thank you very much. I don't know what that is, but I will look into it. So, what's that other question? I just got a couple. Have you read or watched The Magicians? No, but I've been meaning to. I've heard it's fantastic. The book is, at least. I haven't heard that much about the TV series, but it looks kind of cool. So, yeah. This is from Nowixtimis. Come on, how do I pronounce that? Nowixtimis. What does that even mean? What are your thoughts on using young archetypes to write believable and engaging characters? Lots of people have. Like, that's actually a thing that I know some authors have used. Thank you, Devon. I love you too. I don't know enough about Jung's archetypes to give you much advice on that. I would advise you, if you are going to do that, do a lot more research than reading a Wikipedia article, and do a lot more research than just looking up the actual archetypes and then sort of claiming it as an in-depth thing that you do in your book, because a lot of people kind of do that. So yeah, that's what I'd advise. There was a comment that I was going to reply to. I forgot it. Oh yeah, there we go. Tiff Banal. 20 DKK. I don't even know what DKK is. Tell us about the boar. So the boar is this weird story from my life. I did this class on animals in literature. I thought it was going to be fantastic. It was the worst class I have ever taken for so many reasons. Anyways, I eventually came to dislike it so much that when we came to our final project, we had to talk about the role of animals in literature at some point. So I decided to talk about the boar. The fantastic boar. The majestic boar. Unlike any other creature on Earth. And its role in Greek mythology. And the thing is that the boar is used as like this phallic symbol of... There's this story of how one guy is punctured with a boar tusk, and it's all about how he is being emasculated by having a boar skewer him, because it's like being penetrated. And so a friend took a video of it just because it was funny. Yeah. So that's the boar. What's your opinion on Gravity Falls? I'm looking forward to watching it at some point. I haven't watched it yet. All right, let's find another. Let's find another question. Oh, there it is. There's the question I was meaning to answer. Avatar comics. What do you think of them? Specifically, the Search. I like the comics. I think the Search is probably the weakest of the comics. I think the strongest of the comics is the Promise. The Promise is written virtually as well as any other any of the good episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm really interested to see where they go with the Zula's storyline, because they have this weird arc going on. So, this is from V. Do you find it hard to see people as friends if you initially get to know them as fans? It's hard because, I'm in a position where I have to kind of keep a distance for my own personal well-being, but I also want to be able to personally relate to people, particularly patrons. There are instances in which I've become friends with people who are fans. A really close friend who helps me up, Ellie. What on earth are all the patrons are on this document where I gave them to add questions. I can see them all there. They're all on the document watching what I'm doing at the moment. It's a little bit hard, I guess. Because you have to maintain your distance for your own personal reasons. You've got to have personal barriers. DKK is the Danish currency. Thank you. I didn't know that. I did not know that. Also, if this post grabs your attention, I think your camera is slightly out of focus. As on 1080p, it seems to look like 480p. I don't really know how to fix that. I'm doing it with just a standard 1080 HD camera, so should be better than it is. Is there a power imbalance that you can't get rid of? So I have this weird story. One time I posted a video and I was like, hey, what do people think of this? And everyone's like, I totally agree. Really fantastic video. And then I was like, no, I dislike it. And they're like, oh yeah, I totally agree. So I thought that was kind of funny. There is sort of that agreeing with you thing where fans typically agree with you, which is fine. I did that with people I really liked as well. It's just part of that dynamic that's complicated. But no, there are definitely people who I would call friends who were once fans. And working to break down those barriers I really like doing that. These €5 are for you, so can you please mute Dr. Pepper because he keeps spamming the chat. There we go. Dr. Pepper is now in timeout because I can see that I was missing his messages. I'm sorry. He is now banned. If it's a message, let me know again. I'm sorry, I don't have one of my mods here at the moment. It was kind of a bit of a shock. I sort of had to suddenly throw this all together because I didn't expect to actually reach 400k until tomorrow. But then the Game of Thrones video exploded. So that's what happened there. Yeah, hopefully. So this is just, I'm trying to monitor it all at the same time. Which Hogwarts house would you be sorted into? So I was actually so close. If you're so close between two houses, you can actually pick. And I got between, I got between Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, and I got to pick. And because I'm an academic elitist who thinks they're better than everyone else because they like being smart, I picked Ravenclaw. I'm joking, by the way. It's just the cliche with Ravenclaw. Espy's a bit occupied at the moment. So, and thank you. I enjoyed making the episode rewrite. It's not as good as I would as I would like. Like, I'd rewrite the White Walker storyline entirely if I could, because there's a lot of really interesting deep lore in the books about how the White Walkers and the others work, and I would love to see George R. R. Martin go down some of those routes. But I don't know how it's going to turn out, because how close this is going to be to how it is in the books, it's hard to know, because he said quite explicitly, he said that the Night King doesn't exist in the books, pretty much. He said that the Night King, as we see it in the show, is a myth. And I really don't know how they're going to do it. But I would love to see... Yeah, I won't get into that, because that's a long that's a long story. What's your Patronus? My Patronus is a stork, I think, of some kind. It's a bird of some kind. It's the same as J.K. Rowling's, I know that much. Yeah, that's from Light Fury on Patreon. Favorite episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is from Time Flies. Easily the Southern Raiders, hence why I made that video on it. Also, I quite like the Puppet Master, but that's probably not my favorite episodes. Lots of people really like Zuko alone. Matthew St. Cryer or Sia, do you think it's possible to be in light in the in the Avatar world? I probably think that's a little bit of a stretch. Bending light has some really weird world building implications. I don't think... I mean, theoretically, perhaps possible, but I don't think we'll ever see it or anything like that. So Southern Raiders would definitely be my favourite episode. Crossroads of Destiny, being the final episode in Season 2, I would definitely say that that's probably my... I would definitely say it's probably my second favourite episode. It's probably the best climax, which is really weird, because it's the only one that doesn't have a two-parter. Or multiple-parter. So, yeah, I really like Crossroads of Destiny. And also, hang on, I went through and I've ranked my favorite episodes of the series. So the Avatar and the Fire Lord I really like. I think that's a fantastic backstory episode. And Sokka's Master's also really cool. There's a lot there. That's really, really good. So, just reading through some of the patron questions, because they've got 8 pages of them, and I'm only able to do some of them. What have been the top 3 gifts you've received from fans? So someone sent me a patron, a guy named Joel. He sent me this massive box. Had a Lord of the Rings pin. It had this Lord of the Rings wax stamps for videos, for letters. It had a sweatshirt. It had so much cool stuff. It was incredible. Like this handwritten letter, a couple of books. Absolutely amazing. I'm that was actually shocking that he gave me as much as he did. Some people are just unimaginably kind, you know. So favorite Legend of Korra episode. Legend of Korra's episode is different because they're not as episodic. They're not self-contained stories, which is a little bit of a problem for saying favorite episodes. But it would probably be... It'd probably be either season 1 when Amon ends up taking Lynn's bending away. Season 3, the possibly final episode, or season 4 with the introduction of Kuvira. That was a really, really good a really, really good start to the series. Are you a patron of any YouTuber? Yep. I support a guy called Historiograph. He makes really cool history videos about World War II battles and so on. And also support, I can't remember who. Are you currently building your own world? I'm actually not currently building my own world. I'm currently working on a fiction book that isn't heavily world built. I won't quite really get into that. That's from Andrew is an Art. Would you consider hiring an editor? This is from Andrew is an Art as well. Yeah, I've considered hiring an editor, but I still think that I need to. I still need to like learn how to edit myself. And I'm still getting better at that, so I'm trying to work on that before I'd consider hiring an editor, even though it would actually, take a lot of work from me. Ben Andrews, hey Tim, thanks for all the advice. Really helps my writing. Thank you. That's really nice of you. I try my best, and people seem to really like it, which is really kind of them. I mean, I love making those videos. They're a passion of mine, and I will do them for as long as I can. So, thank you very much. Do you prefer bats or lizards? Bats, because bats can fly, and flying is fun. That's from Dragon Arizal. There we go. Will you be doing any more videos with OSP? So this is OSP's Overly Sarcastic Productions. They do some incredible videos on mythology and writing and history and philosophy, which is really cool. You should go check them out if you want. Watch out. That's all I'll say. How did you meet your girlfriend? So, we met when in year 13, when we were paired up to do a musical together, and we had to audition together as like a couple. Interestingly, we were at Fiddler on the Roof, and she was playing Hoddle, and I was auditioning with her as Perchik, and that's how we met initially, and we practiced together, and I was very much into the drama and she was very much into the singing, and our relationship sort of just grew through there, we were dating different people at the time, and then eventually we got together, so that was nice. What's your favorite genre of music and why? I can't really listen to music while I work. I can only listen to like rain. It has to be like monotonous stuff that doesn't interrupt my thought processes. And that's so I listen to rain when it comes to music, I guess, if I'm working. But if I'm listening to actual music, if I want to listen to stuff, then I listen to I listen to indie playlists that are just generic music. Otherwise, I listen to like the Legend of Spyro soundtrack, because I really like that. This is from Light Fury. Do you even lift, bro? Yes, I do lift. I can tell you that now. I go to the gym. It's back day today. I haven't gone to the gym yet because I was going to go this morning, but just had to do this. So that was postponed. I go to the gym 5 days a week. I can bench 70 kgs. Hang on, you guys don't care about this. I'm so sorry. I'll move on to a different thing. Matthew St. Garcia, which do you think is better, Avatar The Last Airbender or Fullmetal Brotherhood? Avatar The Last Airbender. Fullmetal Brotherhood is incredible, but it's not quite as good. What are your Oh, this is a good question, and I'm maybe interested to hear your thoughts as well. Down in the comments. Dragon Arazel says, "What are some of your favorite examples of each different type of character arcs outside of Avatar? What do you think makes them work so well?" Oof. That's hard though. So my favorite character arcs are in Avatar. I would be inclined to say some of the ones in A Song of Ice and Fire are amongst my favorite. I really like Jaime's story arc. I really like... Sansa hasn't really developed much yet in the books in terms of what we see her like in the show, even though she's clearly going in that direction. Team Cap, by the way. Hashtag Team Cap, Team Iron Man. Pff, pff, pff. Ugh. Kidding. Positive arc. Positive arc. I don't know. Like, I mean, Captain America is one of the only flat arcs that you really see, like, that I can think of off the top of my head, to be honest. Most character arcs are positive or negative. Flat arcs aren't that common. I probably like... Oh, what was that show I watched? I quite like the positive arc of some of the characters in Stranger Things. That's quite good. And the negative arc of... I'll have to come back to you on that. Sorry, I'm really struggling to think off the top of my head. Opinions on the inheritance cycle. Yeah. I have some thoughts. I think they're fantastic. The guy was young when he started writing it. You know, we got to give him credit for that. There are a lot of problems with it. It seems boring and uninteresting now, but like, come on, he was a kid. Don't be too hard on him. A flat arc is when the character doesn't really change. They generally change the world around them, or they have to try and remain who they are. That's often it. The struggle of the pressures of the outside world trying to change them, and they have to change the way they are. Positive arcs are when people change for the better. Negative arcs are when people change for the worst. There's a good book by K.M. Wayland, which I bought. Oh, it's in my library out there. Which K.M. Wayland on creating character arcs, which if you want, you can check out there. So let's what's your favorite font? I really like Poor Richard. And if character dialogue uses different fonts to denote characters, does the type influence the voice you mentally associate with the character? Absolutely. I can totally see oh, yeah, Vikings. Oh my gosh, how did I forget Vikings? Vikings has incredible character arcs. I think, you know, King Egbert, King Ragnar, amazing stories. I think Ivar has a fantastic negative arc on the whole. And I would say that Uber doesn't really have a strong arc so much. Gwendolyn. No, that's not her name. Man, it's been a while since I've watched it. Yes, the type of font would definitely change how I see a character's voice. This is from Dear Radade. I'm so sorry if I don't know how to pronounce that. Dear Radade. Should I do a video called 1000 Facts About Avatar? Go for it. Do you. Live your dream. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Just do it. Just do it. I hope I've now inspired you. I hope yeah. Also, share the stream, by the way, with your friends. Get people on. I don't do streams very often. Maybe I should do them more. But, share them with your friends on Twitter and Facebook or whatever. Doesn't worry me. But, cool. I wouldn't do a video on character arcs. I'd probably do a video on specifically positive, negative, and flat arcs. So dividing them into the three. So, have you ever had an argument or bigger issue with any of your fans? No, not really. I mean, like, I've disagreed with fans' comments, but no, I haven't. Unless you talk about the turtle ducks. Turtle ducks. No. Which only my patrons will know what I'm referring to there. So, have you read the Percy Jackson series? Yes, I have read the Percy Jackson series. I've actually read the second series first, before I read the first series. But what are some games with really great world building and magic systems? Actually, The Elder Scrolls. The Elder Scrolls has a really, really interesting lore surrounding... its lore is just incredible. Like, its world building is absolutely amazing, and I love it. With a fiery passion. So, yeah, I think if you're interested in good quality lore, Elder Scrolls has a lot of really interesting stuff. In terms of magic systems in a game, magic systems are hard to do in a game because games are so driven to do numbers. You know, they have you have to have a cost that the player understands, which means they often reduce the lore to things like mana, and that's pretty common. That's fine. That's fine. But it means that it's very hard to do a very unique magic system in a game because there's that limitation to it. McNassie asks, we all know how highly you regard Avatar as an example of storytelling, world building, and character development. What are some criticisms, if you have any, that you have of the show? What would you change in the show if you could? That's a pretty... that's a really hard question. What would I change? In terms of storytelling, the only thing as I mentioned before, would possibly be having more set up to the lion turtles. That's really the only thing that I would probably add off the top of my head. And yeah, I can't really think of anything. Maybe some changes to some of the episodes, like the Great Divide. But even then, like this, a lot. It's fine. It's totally fine. Thoughts on... Thank you very much to... Hang on, need to see. To the original Unicorn. Thoughts on Michael Kirkbride's contribution to the Elder Scrolls lore. He codified, the body of incredible lore. He introduced Kim and Chim and so on. It's amazing. He did incredible work, and I love what he did. And he still contributes to it in some sense if you get really deep into the what is canon and what is lore question. So, have you ever thought about getting into VA work? No. I have not. Has there ever been a movie or show that was so bad that you walked out and wished for a refund? No, but there has been stories that I've walked out from. In particular, The Great and Powerful Oz, which is like this retelling of the Wizard of Oz story from the perspective of the Wicked Witch of the West, played by Mila Kunis. And with James Franco as Oz, and like they were in love. It was awful. It was terrible. I walked out of the theater. So, ha! I was doing one at the same time as High Top Films, and I win. I am victorious. So, where are we going? Oh, that's a good question. This is from Akai. With regards to world building, what examples of political philosophy do you find to have implemented in a way... Oh, with regards to world building. Political philosophy doesn't usually feature... If it does, it's like Machiavellianism, usually. Because the person's cruel and they're willing to do whatever. You know, they're Tywin, basically. I don't typically see Machiavellianism or philosophy being implemented in a story. That's not that common directly, because, you know, political philosophy is more descriptive than prescriptive in fiction, really. So you sometimes see Machiavellianism. I mean, you see democracy in fiction, so you see a lot of Locke. There was I think there's a lot of political philosophy in the Legend of Korra series. Some of it's degreed to adapted to good and to good to a certain degree, and somewhat failed in other areas. Like, a lot of people simplify it to the first season being communism, the second season being theocracy, the third season being anarchy, and the fourth season being fascism. It's not as simple as that. There are some comparisons between Amon and communist ideologies, notably like that communists, that Amon is focused on not on bringing others up to the level of a bender, but on bringing benders down, which is a sort of communist idea of that the structural inequalities are founded in these people being at a state in a higher state than they need to with wealth. So you take the wealth away to help others. But it's not a perfect parallel, because even if you took away their bending, that doesn't make non-benders better off necessarily. Like, it does, whether if you take the wealth, then you can give it to other people. There's a difference. There's a difference there. And also, I'm not endorsing any particular political philosophy. I'm just talking about some broad observations. It's not a perfect parallel, but there are like similarities to it, and I'd have to do a bit more reading on that particular interpretation to probably go more in depth in that. Favorite character in the Dragon Prince, easily Rayla, hands down. So yeah, I think anarchy was quite well set up in the third season. Theocracy, the second season wasn't about theocracy, not really, not at all. In fact, he wasn't even really a theocratic leader. But then the fourth season with fascism, it's like, yeah, she is a fascist leader, but at the same time, she's technically more democratic than any of the other leaders. Like, maybe except for the tribesmen and the water tribes. Like, the Fire Nation is still ruled by a monarchy. The Earth Kingdom was ruled by a monarchy. And the step down from that was an elected leader supported by the people. So the notion that like this was an unequivocal improvement. She's at least proven by competency in some sense. And there also isn't a clear line drawn between like whether or not Kuvira was a fascist and like the flaws in fascist ideology. That didn't come across particularly well in the series. So yeah, anyways, I will get on. I'll make another. I am planning to make a video on that at some point. On all of those topics. I'm also planning to make videos on the different nations, like I did with the Earth Kingdom. When world building, how do you suggest going about building a people? Resources. That's my recommendation. If you're world building a society, what is their environment? I think that's probably the most important thing to start with, because things from religions to their economy to their ability to, their social structure and who controls resources, it's all incredibly... this is from Jaloma. It's all incredibly dependent on the resources. If you've got a society that is in the north, then in the far north of a country, and it's very cold, then you're going to have a radically different society to one that's down south and it's very hot. And these sort of things are objective, as in the people are moving into it, and the people won't change the environment as much as the environment will change the people. So I would focus on what resources are available in that particular area that they're in, what's the terrain like, and who controls the resources that they're they are that they what and who controls that particular resource. So what class do I play? I don't actually typically play. I typically DM. I'll tell you that. I haven't probably played in a long time because I like writing the stories. Yeah. So if you're world building a culture, focus on resources, who has access to them, who controls them. Preferred. This is from Roxas Kyoma. Preferred ranged weapon. I would go with probably a bow and arrow. I'm really basic, but they look so damn cool. Like, I always loved that. I always wanted to build a bow. I always wanted to do archery. I never did, but I kind of wish I did. It would have been so damn cool. So that's that. Why are your eyes so pretty? Are my eyes pretty? I'll leave that up to my girlfriend. Have you seen the YouTube series called Lessons Animation Taught Us? Yes, I have, and funnily enough, that was actually the inspiration for the One Marvelous Scene series, which appeared, which I participated in alongside Nando V Movies and High Top Films and Lessons from a Screenplay. If you could change the story of Season 8 of Game of Thrones, what would you do? Ooh, that is a fantastic... I'm just going to answer these questions before I get to that, because otherwise I'll forget about them, because that'll be a long question. Avatar holds the crown for elemental magic. Thank you, it's Chris. Ideas on how to write elemental magic uniquely from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Ooh, I haven't read any examples off the top of my head. Number one would be make it high cost. So if you use... Avatar has a pretty low cost. Manipulating the earth, manipulating the water, manipulating the air doesn't have any cost to the environment around it. So I would say number one, if you make it a high cost elemental magic system, that's going to radically change how people use the magic. So if creating fire draws on the energy around you, you're killing the earth around you, that sort of thing. If using earth magic turns your hand to stone slowly, and you slowly start to lose your arm, that's going to be fascinating. People would use it very rarely. And on the other hand, you can make it a lot more powerful, because if people use it rarely, then you can have it fit into the story where it's like, they know that they're going to lose the rest of their arm for this, so they're going to wait until the last moment that they need to use their earth magic. Or water magic, requiring blood. So saying that water magic works, but you've got to have blood. That it's about the blood force of the world. So to go with that, you've got to supply your own blood. I would say high cost would be the coolest way to do it. And then, what's an Avatar topic you still want to cover? Oh, so many. I still want to talk about the world building of the Fire Nation, the Water Tribes, the Air Nomads. I want to talk about imperialism in Avatar: The Last Airbender. I want to talk about whether or not Zutara would have been better for storytelling. I want to talk about the notion of... I want to talk about Sokka's character arc in the comics following. I think, yeah, that's what I would go. What I would go with there. So, is that a sock on your mic? Yes, it is. Don't judge the sock. So, Game of Thrones Season 8. Alright, let's go for changes. Alright. Let's get it. Let's get someone fancy. Here we go. We got Jaime, we got the Night King. Jaime would go, "Oh, Night King, you're done for. I'm gonna kill you now, 'cause I'm Azor Ahai. Ching, ching." And he's gonna be like, "No, I am the Night King, and I can bring winter." And he's gonna go, "But you can't bring winter, 'cause I'm autumn." And then he's gonna shoot leaves at the Night King, and the Night King's gonna go, "Ah, my main weakness! It's the end of winter. No!" And he's gonna melt like the White Witch. No, the White Witch, the Green Witch, the Witch of the West, Wicked Witch of the West. There we go. There we go. That's how I would end it. Kidding. So, how would I... The North is... Interesting that you refer to the North as cold and the South as hot from the Southern Hemisphere. Do you think it's more influenced by fantasy real... That's actually a good question, because the South is cold here. Yeah. It's mostly just because in fantasy stories the North is the cold. I guess I'm so Eurocentric in that sort of mindset about the North being cold, because all of the stories that we see, the North is the cold. And I was thinking about Game of Thrones at the time, so the North being cold is not particularly surprising. So what I would actually do with the Game of Thrones Season 8 is, number one, the Night King comes south, and he slaughters a whole bunch of people, and he arrives at Winterfell, and he asks to talk with Jon, and we find out that there's an agreement between the White Walkers and the humans from thousands of years ago that the humans would stay south of the Wall. And the reason, and that they built the wall, because it makes more sense. Who do you think built the wall? The guys who can make things out of ice, or the humans who took so damn long to build King's Landing, which is not 700 feet high and hundreds of kilometers long? So, I would say that, So we find out that they have this ancient agreement that they broke, because why? The Night's Watch pushed the wildlings north, and they kept pushing them north in the story until suddenly they awoke the White Walkers who yeah. I mean, okay, Muhammad, yeah, it is a bit of an ass pull without build up. Yeah, absolutely, you're totally right. They've built it up to be this particular way. I'm more talking about how I would rewrite the White Walker storyline in general. But they could theoretically pull it off, and I like the idea of there being a pact, and then something goes wrong, and Jon has to join the White Walkers, that sort of thing. I wouldn't mind that. What's your favorite scene from Hogfather? So this is Zephyrus. That's a while ago. I'll find you the exact scene. Hang on. It's in here. It's like quite a long scene, so I'll read it out to you. No, sorry, it's not that long a scene. But it's really good. All right, here we go. This is one of my favorite scenes ever. It's from Terry Pratchett's Hogfather. It says, "All right," said Susan. "I'm not stupid. You're saying that humans need fantasies to make life bearable. Really? As if it was some kind of pink pill? No. Humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. Tooth fairies? Hogfathers? Little... Yes, as practice. You have to start out believing the little lies. So then we can believe the big ones. Yes. Justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing. They're not the same at all. You think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy, and yet... Death waved a hand. And yet, you act as if there is some ideal order to the world, as if there is some rightness in which the universe by which it may be judged. Yeah, but people have to believe in that, or what's the point? My point, exactly. There's a whole lot of philosophical stuff in there, which I find really, really interesting, and I don't really have time to get into it. I don't really have time to get into it right now. But yeah, that's really interesting. You should read those books, by the way, if you can. They're really fantastic. So, what would you say are the essential considerations when writing a character that is 1,000 years old? Ugh, what does being alive for 1,000 years do to someone? Play with that, make it interesting. People that have been alive for 10 years are not the same as people who have been alive for 20 years. People that have been alive for 20 are not the same as 50. 80, entirely different again. First of all, people who are 80 still tend to abide by what were the social norms in their, 30s. So, what would someone who's 1,000 be like if they are abiding by what was the social norms back in their... when they were 100, or does it make it or does that make it, do they slowly find the ability to actually be really adaptable to social norms? That's how I would do it. Yeah. What's your creative process? How do you come up with video ideas? I have lots of video ideas. It's more just an issue of it's more just an issue of finding motivation to do particular video ideas. Things like the world building of the Fire Nation is a lot of work, as much as I absolutely adore that kind of content. The Azula video took a long time to sort of psych myself up to do. I was up for 72 hours, almost with only 13 hours sleep in that 72-hour period, and I was working virtually non-stop in that time, and I didn't eat very much. It was terrible for me, but that's just sort of how I work. Yeah. Oh, I dropped my cap. Hang on. That's what I would... Do you have any opinions on good ways to subvert the mentor trope? Yes. Go read the scene from Cersei and Sansa during the Battle of Blackwater. That's in A Clash of Kings, I'm pretty sure. It's fantastic. She is a mentor to Sansa, and that is a harrowing scene. Read it. It's a brilliant subversion of the traditional mentor. It's amazing. When DMing, what do you do to make a good story when you can't predict what the players will do? How do you balance player agency with your own planning and making a good story? I mean, ultimately, I actually think that the best story is the one that the players have the most fun with when playing D&D. It's tempting to think that they're going to want to play your story as strictly as you would like. They don't, you know, and that's fine. I mostly focus on trying to have fun with the players, and a lot of the time the players will actually try and get invested, and follow along with the story. But most of the time I just sort of let them guide the story, and then you can limit them by like having them on a map. And if you put them on a map with the gridded paper, then they're forced to pretty much go along your thing. And if they leave, then you just say, oh, there's nothing out there, and then they eventually come back to your map and you can do exactly what you want. Doing it open world, that's a different question, because you you obviously let them do anything they want. And that's a lot of fun, and I typically allow them to have kind of like an open world adventure at the start, and then I narrow it down, and say, you go and then direct them towards wherever I want them to go. Yes, I am a Kiwi. That's from Swilcrit Canal. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I have no idea. I've never seen Die Hard. When writing fiction, do you do the bulk of your world building before you start or while you're writing? This is from Duncan from Patreon. Thank you very much. I mostly think about the story before I figure out the world building, but I haven't done as much fantasy writing as I would have liked. And at the moment, Are you a Swiftie? Hashtag yes! Yes, I'm a Swiftie. Old Swiftie, thank you very much. Love story still touches my heart. Oh. Still gets to me. Oh. Don't judge me. Even though I kind of like the chorus of me. Don't judge me. How would you rate Laura on a scale of Strax to Sally Sparrow? I would rate her as a Laura because she's even better than Sally Sparrow, and that's saying something because Sally Sparrow is like perfect, and Laura's like better than that. So take that. Are you going to do a lot more creative writing in the future? Yes, I'm planning to do a lot more writing in general. I do check my Instagram messages, but I can't really accept that many because I get a lot of them. What is your favorite bit of history? Ooh. Favorite and thing that I find most interesting are two different questions. So I find World War II history just absolutely fascinating because it's like the worst of humanity at the height of modernity, and it governed how our world functions for so long and still does. So seeing how what happened there shapes the world we live in today is really fascinating to me. And it's really weird because it sort of plays out like a 3-act story. Like the villain, the inciting incident, and the villain ends up taking over for a long time and then is slowly pushed back. Like it's got this weird narrative to it, with the darkest hour of Britain being alone, that sort of thing. So yeah. I would say World War II history is really most fascinating to me because it's just so awful, and it's the worst and the darkest depths to which humanity delves, and peering into the abyss is kind of fascinating. There we go. Yes, I do work out. Thank you very much. Um, I do actually work out. Yep, I work out 5 days a week. And I meant to do back day later today, so that'll be a lot of fun. You know, my patrons are still adding questions. They're adding them. I can see them typing right now because they want me to keep talking and answering their questions. I got a question about one of my favorite tropes or like favorite things in writing. I have a huge weakness for conspiracy stories. Like, you get me a conspiracy story with the government, and I'm there. Ugh. I love stories, you know, where there's something to where there's something like to find out in the government. The government's behind the terrorist attack. That's like a typical story trope that I really just fall for every single time. Do you write like George R. R. Martin, or do you plan stuff out? I used to be more like George R. R. Martin as a gardener, but now I'm more like an architect. By the way, the two differences, like there's gardeners who are, you know, people who kind of set the seeds and figure out where it's going, and they don't necessarily know where their character's going in the end. And then the architects are the people who plan out specifically. And if you want to find out how I actually plan my novels in their entirety, I actually have a whole chapter on it in my book. This goes through gardeners and architects, funnily enough, and it goes through why the way I plan my stories works for me, and some examples on how it might work for you. All to you. Who is your favorite Doctor and which is your favorite series? I really like David Tennant. He was my Doctor, and my favorite series would probably be series 4. This is with Donna. That was absolutely amazing. I loved it. What's your most hated writing trope? This is from Norfolk and Chance. So I would probably say it's the it's the misunderstanding trope that I talked about before, which is where the drama of the story in the romance is all about a misunderstanding between the two. Also when the romance controls the plot when smart characters would be thinking about something else. Imagine if, like, John and Dany were in a relationship together and the Night King was coming and they were having a disagreement about whether or not he should be hanging out with Sansa so much. Like, that to me is just... that's like that's kind of that's what really annoys me. There's a lot of that sort of stuff that I dislike. It's a lot of just like conventional boring romance writing that dominates the plot in a story that doesn't necessarily need it to dominate it. So yeah, that's what I would probably say. Landry Brown, any chance you would do an on-write video on dialogue? Yeah, I plan to do a lot more of the nitty-gritty stuff in the future. I did one on exposition. I did one on foreshadowing, which are like skills and not tropes. And I want to do more of that because, annoyingly, it's like actually some of the more important stuff. It's some of the more important stuff to actually know when you're writing. Because like talking about Civil Wars, like more people watched a video on Civil Wars than they did watch on I think it was exposition. I might be wrong there, but exposition's one of the lower viewed ones. And even though exposition is one of the most important skills you should have as a writer, and I get it's not as interesting to talk about, but it's interesting to me because I'm a nerd. I love it. But those sort of skills. So I want to talk about dialogue at some point. It's I will definitely be doing that. Some other skills that I want to look into are like just doing like creative writing descriptions, where to put them, that sort of thing. Yeah. Do you have any? Come on, guys! I'm trying to. They keep adding questions. Also, I'll find some questions on here because I've been ignoring the chat for a little bit. Flick me your questions and I will try to. Are you ever planning on doing a non-writing video on experienced protagonists? Yeah, I mean that's on the cards. Because I think Ragnar's a great character. I really love him, and I really love King Ekber, who essentially becomes a protagonist. No, I don't usually watch anime, Lawrence. I have watched a couple. I've watched Death Note, I've watched FMA, I've watched Be the Beginning, I've watched a couple of others. Attack on Titan. Yeah, so I have. Yeah, I have. Crap! I forgot what I was talking about there. When it comes to armor and no, I won't do that one. How can you write a good story and hide the fact that some characters have plot armor? I mean, plot armor is not bad, to be clear. Plot armor is often treated as an objectively bad trope, but so there's this really interesting thing which I've noticed about how and when we kill characters in fiction. And most of the time, characters never die before their character arcs is complete. So, you know, think Boromir going from a negative change towards giving into the ring, and then changing and redeeming himself, saving the hobbits. You know, he doesn't die until he's redeemed himself. Some characters don't ever redeem themselves, like Denethor never redeemed himself. But a lot of the time, characters don't usually die before they've completed their character arc, which is why you can sort of figure it out. And they have these scenes in films and in TV shows where you realize they're giving them that scene so that they can die soon. Like, so yeah, you can detect these scenes where we give them to so that they can be set up to die later on, and that's fine. I don't really see any problem with that, at all. The problem is when you've got a precedent for killing characters before their character arc is complete. Think Robb Stark in Game of Thrones. And suddenly, the characters in the most recent Game of Thrones episode, the characters that die, all of them had completed their character arcs, which is very unconventional for Game of Thrones. All of them had been fully redeemed, fully come circle, and I won't specify who in case people haven't seen it, but all of them had been given their moment. And that's why people sort of didn't feel like any meaningful characters died. Because the characters who would normally die, because their character arc isn't complete in Game of Thrones, they all stayed alive, because there's that underlying assumption the characters can't die until they've been redeemed. Yeah. So, you don't need to hide the fact that characters have plot armor. People can enjoy a story without a character, without that constant fear of death. We can derive a lot more emotional tension and a lot more interest from relationships. Are they going to be able to keep friends with this person? Are they going to be able to turn their enemy to their side, or are they going to have to fight them? Death is not the only thing in the world that matters. Jaime losing his hand in Game of Thrones is incredibly... You can see the anguish it causes him. It's written fantastically, and that tension's built up, and there's no death there, you know. Yeah, so I would how do you focus the dramatic tension and the emotional tension not on whether or not they can die. That's basically it. And you drive more power from them actually completing their character arcs. That's the meaningful moment. Yeah, you can get shock and so on from other stuff. Hello. Oh. Okay. All right. Can you give me 10? Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to wrap it up soon, guys. But to quickly finish off the questions, what advice would you give to some first-time DMs? Follow a don't write your own story just yet. Try and know the actual rules. Make sure you know the rules of the game. Do you prefer Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel? I like Wonder Woman. And any more questions in the chat? Any more that you quickly need to get out before I head off? Also, thank you very much for 400k. I literally haven't said it, but 400k, it's incredible. That's amazing. I never would have thought I'd get this far, so I'm really, really happy that I did. So yeah, thank you very much, and I guess this will be it. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope I can. Also, by the way, come follow me on like all my stuff: Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. I am on Twitch. I don't think I've got a link down to my Twitch though. But come follow me in all those places, because that's where I do actually like talk a bit, and I do live streams on Instagram quite a bit. So come follow me on there, and then we will be able to you'll be able to see my live streams on there, which are a lot more casual than this one. Thank you very much for all your support. Thank you very much for being here with me, and I hope I continue to make content that you like in the future. Thank you. And stay nerdy, and I'll see you in the future.